Well, it's Friday again, and I think it's 2 weeks since I did the last one of these videos, and in that 2 week period, I'm sure you're glad that you're not a Member of Parliament, because it's fair to say that there's only one thing dominating the agenda, which is the Brexit debate. Last week, the Prime Minister brought back the Withdrawal Agreement, which is the 585-page document, which will be the basis upon our withdrawal from the European Union. And then this week, or yesterday to be precise, the Prime Minister signed the 26-page, rather vague, I'm afraid, declaration of our future relationship from a trading perspective with the European Union as we move on. So it's fair to say that things have become very excited in Westminster. I think there are some people who have overstepped the mark. I think the decision of Jacob Rees-Mogg and his followers in the European Research Group, the so-called ERG, to start a leadership campaign against the Prime Minister was ill-advised, ill thought through, and frankly wrong. The reality of the situation is that the Prime Minister is not the problem here. She is doing her very best under very difficult circumstances. And whilst I am not in any way, shape or form comfortable with the agreements that she has brought back, I do think that it's probably as good as any Prime Minister could have achieved, because ultimately what we're trying to do here is to leave the European Union without damaging the British economy. And I think it's becoming increasingly clear that you cannot leave your largest trading partner and expect there to be no impact upon our economy. So the reality is you can put a letter in of no confidence in the Prime Minister, you can have a leadership election at this point in time, but does it change anything? Does it solve anything? My answer is very clearly not. I think that it is a luxury that we can ill afford, and I think that the response of the general public to that leadership effort by the ERG has been dismissive, and indeed I think people have been genuinely bewildered at the vanity of those people who made those calls for the Prime Minister to resign. So Brexit has been ongoing, and I'm afraid it will be ongoing until Christmas, and all I can say is I share your pain, but in comparison you can switch off, you don't have to watch the news. I'm afraid I have no choice. I'm in Westminster all week, every week, which is why I was absolutely delighted to see some constituents come down to see me on Tuesday. In effect, I make a mistake, it was Monday. They were coming down for a cystic fibrosis reception, and Alison, Kim and Stefan are all constituents that I have met previously. They have a huge involvement in the campaign to try and ensure that the correct drugs are available to those who need them. And suffice to say that we're not doing enough, whether it's the government in Westminster or the government in Cardiff Bay, because clearly health is a devolved issue. We could be doing more. But it was fantastic to see them in Westminster. There was a large group of cystic fibrosis campaigners who came to the reception. The reception was being organised by Ian Austin, a friend of mine who's a Labour MP from the West Midlands. And I think we need to move this issue forward, because ultimately the decisions as to whether drugs are available to those who are suffering from cystic fibrosis are made by NICE, but we need to have some clarity in the process. And I think when you talk to parents, when you talk to campaigners who know of the pain that people are suffering, and indeed of the loss of loved ones as a result of this disease, it's difficult not to be moved. So we do need to move this forward. But certainly it was a pleasure to see them. I was delighted to take them on a quick tour of the House of Commons before we went to the reception. And my understanding is that the whole event went extremely well. Let's hope that there will be a positive outcome as a result. The other thing I did in Westminster this week, which is of interest, was I attended an event at the London Museum in Docklands, which I'd never been to before. And if anybody wants a trip to London at any point in time, I would thoroughly recommend the London Museum in Docklands, which gives the history of London ports and what a history that is. But within the exhibition at the museum, there is a very large exhibition about slavery, because clearly, as with Liverpool, Bristol, London was also a port involved in the slave trade. And I was there on Thursday morning because, as you might be aware, back in 2015, the Prime Minister, when she was Home Secretary, and Karen Bradley, who's a good friend of mine, was the junior minister in the Home Office. They were responsible for the Modern Slavery Act, and on Thursday we were presenting a signed copy of the Modern Slavery Act to the museum in order to bring their slavery exhibition up to date. Because, as Karen Bradley said quite eloquently at the event on Thursday morning, the reality is that despite the fact that we thought that slavery had been abolished in the 1830s, the truth of the matter is that we still have an issue in this country, across Europe and across the world. And the fact that we did, as a country, pass the Modern Slavery Act in 2015 is something that we should be proud of. It's an example of the United Kingdom leading the way and highlighting to the rest of the world what they can do on this important issue. So it was a pleasure and a privilege to be involved in that event on Thursday morning. Back in the constituency, I'm afraid I missed this event at Aberconwy School, but I did have a member of my office attend, and they can't sing the praises of the event enough. Aberconwy School came up trumps, is what I'm hearing. And what I really liked about this event was the fact that Aberconwy School not only had their pupils involved, but also pupils from many of the schools that feed in to Aberconwy. So it was a great event, a great musical from what I gather, and I'd like to congratulate the children and the teachers from all the schools involved for what apparently, and I am sorry to have missed it, but what was apparently a fantastic evening. So congratulations to all of them. The other thing I'd like to touch upon, I was being given a lift on Sunday morning by a taxi to take me to the BBC studios in Bangor. And the taxi driver was very keen to tell me how much he had enjoyed the Christmas fair in Llandudno. And I do think that these events, whether they are Christmas fairs in Llandudno or whether they are the food festival in Conwy, they're all important because they bring people into the towns of this constituency on a regular basis. So again, I'd like to congratulate everybody who was involved with that event, which had clearly made an impression upon my taxi driver. And finally, talking about small businesses, we know that this constituency is built upon small businesses. We know that we have the best shopping centre in North Wales in Llandudno, but we also know that the high street is struggling at this point in time. So I have one message for you to finish this broadcast with. Next Saturday, the 1st of December, is Small Business Saturday. Make an effort, start your Christmas shopping and do it locally, because ultimately if you spend your money with shops in the locality in Aberconwy, then what we are doing is protecting jobs in our communities and protecting businesses in our communities. So Small Business Saturday, 1st of December, I would ask you to support our local businesses.